the very first moment this energy opened today, the atmosphere felt heavy, almost electric, like something that had finally snapped after being stretched for far too long. There's a truth rising here, a truth that no one can suppress anymore. A truth that was always meant to come out in its own timing. For days, weeks, maybe even months, there has been a presence working behind the scenes, trying to twist narratives, manipulate emotions, and pull invisible strings to keep your person confused, cornered, and emotionally trapped. But that time is over now. Today feels like the day when the universe finally said, enough. Today feels like the moment when everything that was hidden is being dragged into the light, whether the third party likes it or not. And because of that exposure, your person's family is not just upset, they are absolutely done with this interference. Something in the energy suggests that they have witnessed something directly, something undeniable, something so wrong and so disrespectful that no one can pretend anymore. No one can make excuses. No one can defend what the third party has done. It's as if the truth walked into the room and demanded to be seen. There's an urgency in what I'm picking up, a sudden shift like someone running out of patience after holding it together for too long. Your person's family has watched them struggle silently, watched them carry weight they never explained, watched them withdraw, lose confidence, stop smiling the way they used to. And even if your person didn't confess everything out loud, families feel energies. They feel when something is wrong. But today, something happened that made everything crystal clear. Maybe a message was seen, maybe a lie was uncovered, maybe an argument broke out, or maybe a pattern that had been ignored suddenly showed its true face. Whatever it was, it removed the mask completely. The third party is out of excuses. Their manipulation is out of places to hide. Their intentions are no longer blending in with concern or affection or loyalty. Everything they've been doing is now visible, naked, exposed, and undeniable. And your person's family reacted exactly as anyone who truly loves someone would react when they see deceit aimed at their heart. This anger isn't surface level. This isn't a small argument or a petty disagreement. This is protective anger. This is the kind of anger that rises when someone finally realizes how deeply another person has been hurting someone they care about. I keep hearing the words, "This is unacceptable," echoing through the energy field, and it feels like the entire family is standing together in one unified stance. They may not always agree with each other. They may have had their own personal issues with your person. But on this matter, they are in absolute alignment. They know that the third party overstepped. They know that this crossed personal, emotional, and moral boundaries. They know that this wasn't just a mistake, but a calculated move meant to hold your person emotionally hostage. They know that your person didn't deserve this. Your person is in a state of emotional shock, but not the unpleasant kind. It feels like they are watching truth unfold in real time, and they don't even have to speak anymore, because everyone else is now speaking for them. Their family is expressing everything your person was afraid to say, everything they kept inside, everything they tried to rationalize. And the most surprising part is that the family isn't just angry at what the third party did in general. They are specifically angry because it harmed your person's emotional connection to you. There's this unspoken understanding that you were the one who brought peace into your person's life. You were the one who made them grow. You were the one who made them feel like a better version of themselves. And the third party knew that. That's why they targeted the connection. That's why their actions weren't random but intentional. When people fear losing control, they often lash out at what they see as a threat. You became the threat, not because you did anything wrong, but because your energy brought clarity to your person. Clarity that the third party could not manipulate. Something in your person is awakening now. There's a shift, a fire, a realization that They don't have to stay stuck in situations that drain them. The chains that held them mentally are breaking because truth is powerful. Truth frees. Truth opens doors that have been locked for too long. And the truth is that your person has been emotionally suffocating in that dynamic. They've been censoring themselves, holding back their words, walking on eggshells, trying to avoid conflict, trying to not upset anyone, trying to maintain peace in situations where peace wasn't even possible. But today changed everything. Today the pressure broke. Today their families saw beyond the surface. Today your person isn't alone in this anymore. This exposure didn't happen by accident. The universe orchestrated it. There's divine timing here, divine intervention, divine protection wrapping around this whole situation. Every lie that was told was actually building the path toward this moment. Every manipulation that went unnoticed was gathering weight until the perfect time when it could no longer be ignored. And now the karmic cycle is collapsing on itself. Third parties who manipulate always believe they are smarter than everyone else, that they can twist reality however they like. But divine justice is silent until the moment it speaks loud enough for everyone to hear. And today is that moment. Your person's family is standing on the side of truth, on the side of loyalty, and surprisingly, on the side of the connection you share with your person. This isn't a family that wants the third party involved anymore. This isn't a family confused about who is causing the chaos. They have seen enough. They don't want that energy near their loved one. They don't want the patterns repeating. They don't want to see their person emotionally drained anymore. They want clarity, peace, stability, and genuine affection to return into your person's life. And whether they've said it out loud or not, the one energy that makes your person feel all of that is you. For the first time in a long time, your person is feeling understood. They don't have to defend themselves or explain why they felt trapped, or why they were distant, or why their emotions were inconsistent. Everyone finally sees what they were going through, and that validation is giving them strength. Strength to break cycles, strength to reject manipulation, strength to walk away from toxic influence, strength to choose what feels authentic instead of what feels forced. This is the turning point the universe has been waiting for. The wheel is shifting, the cycle is ending, the truth is leading the way. If this message aligns with what your soul has been sensing, type in the comments. Truth always reveals itself. The energy moving into this next phase is even more intense than before, almost like the air is vibrating with truth that can no longer be pushed aside. The exposure that happened earlier didn't just shock your person's family, it triggered a chain reaction that is still unfolding. People who once stayed neutral are now speaking up. People who once avoided involvement now feel compelled to take a stance. It's as if every silent witness, every quiet observer, every family member who once looked away has suddenly gained clarity they never had before. The third party didn't just make a mistake, they revealed who they truly are. And that revelation is echoing through the entire environment surrounding your person. There is a moment in every story when the facade cracks, when the mask falls off, and the truth beneath it becomes impossible to ignore. That moment has arrived here. Your person's family is replaying events, conversations, past conflicts, sudden changes in your person's behavior, and they're connecting dots that never made sense until now. They're remembering the tension in your person's voice, the exhaustion in their expression, the heaviness in their presence. And now they understand why. They are realizing that all the emotional weight, all the confusion, all the instability wasn't random. It was influenced, instigated, and encouraged by someone who had the most to lose if your person ever broke free. This understanding has created a storm, not the chaotic kind, but the clarifying kind, a storm that washes away illusions, strips away false loyalties, and reveals who genuinely cares and who doesn't. And the surprising part is that this clarity isn't bringing chaos, it's bringing order. For the first time in a long time, the family knows exactly who the enemy is, exactly who was creating division, exactly who was damaging your person's emotional balance. And that realization has created unity where there once was hesitation. Your person, on the other hand, is going through an internal rebirth. They are processing the shock, the validation, the sudden emotional support they didn't expect. They're thinking about all the times they questioned their own intuition, all the times they doubted their own feelings, all the times they allowed themselves to be convinced that they were overreacting. But today showed them they were right all along. Their soul knew. Their heart knew. Their consciousness felt something was off. But manipulation has a way of making people doubt themselves. Now that the manipulation has been exposed, the fog in their mind is lifting. They can see what they couldn't see before. They can feel what they silenced. They can acknowledge what they suppressed. In this clarity, one truth shines brighter than everything else. You stand out in their heart as the peaceful memory, the authentic bond, the connection that never demanded control, never restricted their growth, never manipulated their fears. You were the safe space in their story, the light in the chaos, the voice that reassured their spirit even when you both were in separation. And that connection, that calmness, that emotional truth, is what the third party wanted to destroy. That's why they acted out of desperation. That's why they tried to twist narratives. That's why they attempted to sabotage anything that reminded your person of who they truly were when they were with you. Now the family sees it too. They see the difference in your person's energy when your influence was present. They see how your presence brought them hope, stability, confidence, a sense of direction. The family may not have said anything before, but the contrast is undeniable now. They know your person was happier then. They know the connection with you was meaningful. They know that the chaos that entered afterward wasn't coincidence, it was caused. And instead of blaming your person, they now blame the one who created that chaos. The energy around the family feels protective, almost fierce. They're not just angry at what the third party did. They're angry because your person's heart was mistreated, disrespected, and dragged into battles it never asked for. And beneath all this anger lies another emotion: guilt. Not guilt toward you, but guilt toward your person. Family members are realizing they should have paid closer attention. They should have asked deeper questions. They should have stepped in sooner. They should have trusted their intuition when they sensed something was off. That guilt is turning into determination. Determination to protect, determination to guide, determination to not let your person go through this emotional darkness ever again. It's as though the entire family is silently vowing to stand between your person and anyone who tries to manipulate them again. Your person is absorbing all of this silently but deeply. They're not just feeling exposed, they're feeling seen. And that shift is powerful. When someone finally realizes that the people around them have woken up to the truth, they stop carrying the burden alone. They start imagining a different future. A future where they aren't trapped by emotional manipulation. A future where they aren't afraid to express their feelings. A future where they don't have to choose between peace and loyalty. A future where they can start connecting with the person their heart has been tied to all along. This moment is the beginning of that future. Energy is shifting rapidly now. Old cycles are collapsing. Toxic influence is burning out. Hidden motives are being revealed, and in the middle of all this transformation, your connection with your person is resurfacing, quietly, naturally, inevitably. Not because of pressure, but because truth always gravitates toward truth. You were never the problem. You were the clarity they needed. And now that clarity is returning in ways no one can stop. If your soul feels the shift happening behind the scenes, type, "I trust the truth unfolding." The energy in this next chapter feels heavier, but not in a negative way. More like the weight of truth settling into place, solidifying, anchoring itself so deeply that no one involved can escape its presence anymore. What happened earlier has created ripples that continue to spread outward, touching every conversation, every decision, every hidden corner of the situation. The third party didn't just expose themselves, they triggered a complete energetic reset. People are reflecting in ways they never have before. Your person's family is replaying the entire journey, where things began, where they shifted, and how everything spiraled into the chaos they witnessed. And they are realizing, maybe for the very first time, that your person was living under emotional pressure that no one fully understood. The emotional fog that once clouded their judgment is lifting rapidly, revealing patterns that were always there but hard to see when manipulation was active. Your person is quieter than usual right now, but not because they are lost, because they are finally seeing clearly. They're processing, thinking, revisiting moments where they silenced their own instincts just to keep peace in an environment that was never peaceful to begin with. They're remembering the times they felt trapped, suffocated, obligated to stay in a situation that drained them more than it nourished them. And for the first time, they're questioning why they tolerated it for so long. They're asking themselves why they ignored their intuition, why they convinced themselves that choosing themselves was selfish, why they let guilt and fear overrule what their soul was screaming for. The exposure of the third party didn't just reveal lies, it revealed forgotten parts of your person's own identity. The family's reaction plays a big role in this. Their anger isn't just a passing moment, it's a catalyst. It's shifting the power dynamic. Where your person once felt isolated, unsupported, or uncertain, now they feel reinforced. The family's clarity is giving your person permission to choose differently, to walk away, to reclaim themselves, to consider the possibility of rebuilding their emotional world without the influence that kept them small. It's powerful how quickly everything changes when the truth is undeniable. Suddenly, the excuses that once held your person back no longer make sense. Suddenly, the fears that once felt overwhelming are dissolving. Suddenly, the emotional chains that once felt locked are loosening. They're beginning to realize that the situation they were stuck in wasn't destiny, it was a distraction. A karmic lesson, a test of strength, intuition, and emotional resilience. And through all of this inner transformation, their thoughts are drifting toward you in ways they didn't permit themselves before. It's almost as if your presence in their life, whether past or energetic, has become their compass again. The warmth they once felt near you is resurfacing. The emotional clarity they had when you were around is becoming impossible to ignore. You represent a version of themselves they want to return to, the version that felt alive, inspired, grounded, hopeful. The third party always sensed this. They sensed that your connection wasn't casual or fleeting. They sensed that the bond between you and your person wasn't something that could be severed through manipulation. And that's why they acted out of fear. Deep down, they knew they were trying to compete with the connection that was never theirs to begin with. Now that their mask has fallen, your person's family finally sees the full picture. They see that your influence was never harmful. It was healing. They see that you were not part of the problem. You were the clarity the universe placed in their path. And perhaps the most significant realization is that your person wasn't weak for wanting you. They were strong, for trying to follow something real in a world filled with noise. There is a protective shift forming around you now, not just from your person's heart, but from the entire energy surrounding them. You are no longer seen as an outsider or a threat. You are seen as the one thing that was genuine all along. The family may not say it out loud yet, but their actions, their reactions, their anger at the third party, they all point to a single truth. They recognize your value. They recognize your role. They recognize the light you brought into their loved one's life. This awareness is pushing your person into deeper reflection. They're realizing that the love they had for you, the emotional pull they felt, the desire to reconnect, none of it was weakness. It was alignment. It was authenticity. It was soul memory. And now that the third party's interference has collapsed, your person is revisiting old feelings with new understanding. They're acknowledging how deeply they cared for you, how deeply they still do, and how much they suppressed just to avoid conflict. Their heart is opening again, not recklessly, but intentionally. They're not running this time. They're observing. They're not dismissing their emotions. They're validating them. The old versions of themselves, the ones filled with fear, guilt, obligation, and confusion, are fading. A stronger, more honest version is emerging, one that no longer wants to be controlled or silenced. The universe is supporting this shift. The energy around your person is becoming lighter, clearer, more aligned. It's almost as if every shadow that once clouded their path is being removed one by one. The family's anger created space for change. The exposure created clarity, and the truth created momentum. What was blocked is now moving. What was stagnating is now releasing. And in that release, your connection with your person is finding air again. This isn't about rushing back together or forcing reconciliation. This is about energetic alignment, returning after being distorted for far too long. Your souls are remembering each other. If you feel your intuition pulling you into this message, type, "I trust the path unfolding for us." The energy now feels like the aftermath of a storm. Not the chaos itself, but that heavy, silent moment when everything has been stripped bare and the truth is the only thing left standing. Your person is in a state of deep internal rewiring, a kind of emotional recalibration that happens only when someone has witnessed the collapse of an illusion they depended on. There's a quiet seriousness around them. Not sadness, not panic, but an uncomfortable awareness that their life has been moving in a direction that didn't reflect their authentic self. They're waking up from a long emotional numbness and slowly beginning to feel again. Feel clarity, feel pain, feel hope, feel desire, feel the consequences of choices they made under pressure, and feel the weight of all the moments they lost because they were trying to protect the wrong things. The family's reaction has changed everything. For years or months, your person felt like they had to hold everything together with their own hands. They thought no one would understand. They thought no one would believe them even if they spoke. But when the third party exposed themselves today, it was as if someone took a match and threw it on the trail of gasoline that had been building all along. Everything ignited. Everything became visible. And suddenly the burden your person carried alone became a truth shared by everyone in the room. The family sees the manipulation now. They see the behavior patterns. They see the way the third party twists situations and emotions. They see the disrespect, the jealousy, the possessiveness, and the insecurity that fueled this entire dynamic. Your person feels a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Relief because they no longer have to pretend. Exhaustion because pretending for so long has taken a toll. All those times they forced themselves to be strong, to endure, to swallow their own truth just to avoid conflict. Those moments are coming back to the surface for healing. This is an emotional detox, the kind that leaves someone changed, not temporarily, but permanently. Your person is realizing how much of their peace they sacrificed just to keep everyone else calm. And now that the mask has fallen, the exhaustion has nowhere to hide. It's flooding them. But this isn't weakness. This is the cleansing before renewal. The third party's exposure has also forced your person to confront their own emotional patterns. They're recognizing moments where they silenced their intuition because someone else's voice was louder. They're acknowledging times when they followed guilt instead of guidance, fear instead of clarity. They're seeing how they allowed themselves to shrink, to compromise, to disconnect from their true nature just to fit into a dynamic that didn't align with their spirit. And now that the truth has come out, your person cannot unsee it. They cannot unknow it. They cannot return to who they were before this moment. Their soul has shifted too far to go back. This entire revelation is also bringing your connection with them into sharp focus. Not because they're idealizing the past, but because they're seeing what real connection looks like when contrasted with manipulation. You never demanded control. You never twisted their emotions. You never made them feel guilty for growing. You never competed for power. Instead, your presence encouraged them to expand. You brought out the version of them they actually liked, the version that smiled differently, the version that dreamed again, the version that believed in their future. And the more they reflect, the more they realize how rare that kind of energy is. The family sees it too. Their anger toward the third party isn't just about the lies or sabotage, it's about the emotional damage done to someone they love. And quietly, they are remembering the time when your person was connected to you, when the emotional landscape around them felt more balanced, more hopeful, more alive. Even if they never said your name, even if they pretended they didn't care, the shift in your person's energy when you were in their life did not go unnoticed. And now that everything is blown open, the family is starting to understand why your person never fully let go of you internally. This moment isn't about reconciliation, not yet. It's about revelation. It's about the universe rearranging pieces that were incorrectly placed. It's about removing the energetic block that prevented your person from stepping into the highest version of themselves. The third party's exposure wasn't destruction, it was divine intervention. It was the universe clearing the field, removing the mask, burning away illusions that corrupted the heart. And now that the smoke is clearing, your person is standing at the beginning of a new emotional timeline. There's a quiet determination forming inside them, a resolve to reclaim authority over their own life. They're no longer trying to justify the wrong people. They're no longer trying to rationalize things that harm them. They're no longer tolerating environments that dim their light. They're starting to realize that their heart always knew where it belonged, but fear kept them frozen. Today's exposure shattered that fear. It forced them to see what happens when they ignore their truth for too long. And in that awakening, your energy returns to their mind like a memory they were trying not to feel. You represent everything that was real, everything that never required pretending. Everything they lost access to while trying to protect someone who only cared about controlling them. Their heart is remembering you in ways that feel deeper now, not romantic fantasy, but emotional truth. They're realizing the connection between you wasn't something that can fade because of time or distance. It was always rooted in something much stronger. Alignment, purpose, soul recognition. If this message resonates with what your spirit has been sensing, write in the comments, "I welcome the truth that sets us free." The energy now feels like someone standing at the edge of their old life, looking back at everything they tolerated, everything they carried, everything they compromised, and finally understanding why their soul never felt settled. Your person is having realizations that cut deep, not because they are painful, but because they are long overdue. When someone lives under emotional manipulation for a long time, they forget what clarity feels like. They forget what inner peace sounds like. They forget what it feels like to breathe without tension in their chest. And today, after this massive exposure, your person is experiencing that clarity for the first time in what feels like years. The family's reaction continues to ripple through their mind. Every moment of anger, every sharp word spoken in defense of your person, every expression of disbelief at the third party's behavior, all of it is replaying like a movie they can't turn off. But this time, for once, they don't feel alone. They don't feel unheard. They don't feel like they're the only one who can see the truth. The validation is giving them emotional oxygen. It's giving them a strength they forgot they had. They're standing taller internally, even if they're silent on the outside. What's interesting is how quickly the foundation of this entire dynamic is collapsing. When manipulation is exposed, it loses its power instantly. The third party relied on secrecy, confusion, and control. They relied on your person doubting themselves and relying on them emotionally. But now everything has shifted. Your person can feel the grip loosening. They can feel the energetic ties breaking. They can feel the emotional fog lifting. They can feel the internal space opening that was once suffocatingly tight. This isn't a small shift. This is the beginning of the end of a karmic cycle. Your person isn't angry the way the family is. Their anger is quieter, more internal, more reflective. They're angry at themselves for tolerating things. They're angry at the time they wasted. They're angry at how long they let someone else narrate their life. But beneath that anger is relief. Deep, undeniable relief. Relief that they're not crazy. Relief that their intuition was right. Relief that the truth finally came out without them having to destroy themselves emotionally to prove it. And beneath that relief is something even deeper. Grief. Not grief for the third party or the situation, but grief for the version of themselves who didn't know better, who tried too hard, who stayed too long, who apologized for things that weren't their fault, who lost connection to the happiest parts of themselves. They're grieving the years they spent in survival mode. They're grieving the dreams they postponed. They're grieving the love they buried under pressure. Grief is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. It's the soul releasing everything that was never meant to stay. In that emotional release, your presence surfaces again, not as a fantasy or longing, but as clarity. When they think of you now, it's not a craving or nostalgia. It's acknowledgement, recognition, understanding. You represented the version of themselves they want to return to. The version that wasn't afraid to hope, to trust, to feel deeply. The version that believed in something more. And now they're realizing that the emotional shift they felt around you wasn't projection. It was alignment. You were always the truth they were too scared to choose. The family, interestingly, senses this too. They may not be speaking it, but their energy is shifting toward acceptance of the connection you shared. They're realizing that the third party wasn't protecting your person, they were trapping them. They're realizing that your person wasn't unstable, they were overwhelmed. They're realizing that the period when you were in their life wasn't the problem. It was the only time your person looked genuinely happy. Families don't forget those things. They store it quietly, and when clarity arrives, those old memories resurface like puzzle pieces that suddenly fit. Your person is sitting with all of this, processing the truth, remembering the past, questioning their decisions, and slowly beginning to see the path forward. They're not rushing. They're not acting impulsively. They're letting the truth settle so they can choose from clarity, not fear. That's what makes this moment so powerful. For the first time in a long time, They're not choosing based on guilt. They're not choosing based on obligation. They're not choosing based on pressure. They're choosing based on truth. The third party senses this shift, and that's why their energy feels unstable. Manipulation requires control. Exposure destroys that control. They can feel your person slipping out of their emotional net. They can feel the family rejecting them. They can feel truth replacing fear. And when someone loses control, their behavior becomes unpredictable. But your person isn't affected the way they used to be. They're watching from a distance now, recognizing the patterns, understanding the tactics, and seeing clearly what they once made excuses for. Your person is beginning to accept that the emotional bond they share with you never died. It simply went dormant while they were trying to survive something that drained their spirit. But now, in this clarity, that bond is lighting up again. Not loudly, but steadily. Their heart is remembering who it resonates with. Their soul is remembering what peace feels like, and that remembrance is stronger than any lie the third party ever tried to create. If this aligns with what your intuition already sensed, type, "I trust the truth" to guide the next steps. The energy moving into this next chapter feels like the first deep breath someone takes after being underwater for too long. Your person is finally coming up for air. For months, maybe longer, they've been functioning in survival mode, half present, half disconnected, half themselves. But now that the truth has erupted in front of everyone, the emotional pressure that once sat on their chest like a weight is starting to loosen. They can think more clearly. They can see without distortion. They can feel their own emotions without guilt or interference. This clarity is uncomfortable, because it forces them to acknowledge everything they avoided. But it's also freeing in a way they didn't expect. For the first time in a very long time, they're feeling something close to relief. Your person is replaying conversations in their head, not with regret, but with understanding. They're seeing all the moments where they silenced themselves to keep the peace. They're revisiting the instances where their intuition tried to warn them, but they brushed it aside, thinking they were overreacting. They're remembering the countless times they tried to express their boundaries, only to be manipulated, gaslit, or guilted back into compliance. When someone spends a long time inside a distorted environment, they begin to normalize the dysfunction. But exposure, public, undeniable, unavoidable exposure, breaks that normalization instantly. Your person is seeing the truth so clearly now, it almost hurts. Meanwhile, the family's anger hasn't cooled, it has sharpened. They're not just upset about what happened in the moment, they're reflecting on everything that led up to it. They're realizing how many signs they missed. They're recognizing how much your person endured without letting anyone know. They're noticing patterns of emotional suppression, changes in personality, shifts in behavior that suddenly make sense in the context of manipulation. This insight is firing up their protective instincts. They've moved past shock and into resolve. They're no longer tolerating the third party's presence, influence, or excuses. Their energy now stands like a wall between your person and the one who tried to control them. Your person can feel this shift deeply. For so long they believed they had to handle everything alone. They believed no one would support them if they tried to walk away. They believed staying was the safer option because the alternative felt unpredictable and overwhelming. But now, with the family seeing the truth, your person suddenly has something they haven't felt in a long time. Permission. Permission to choose differently. Permission to walk away. Permission to reclaim themselves. And surprisingly, permission to reconnect with the part of their heart they buried because they didn't want to cause conflict. That buried part is you. Your presence is becoming louder in their emotional field, not because of longing alone, but because you represent truth. You represent who they were before manipulation entered their life. When they think of you now, they don't just think of the connection. They think of the version of themselves they were with you. Confident, open, playful, hopeful, honest. They think of how their life felt more aligned, more meaningful, more expansive. Even in moments of separation, the connection never felt heavy or suffocating. It felt like breathing. And when someone has spent a long time suffocating emotionally, the memory of breathing becomes unforgettable. Your person is starting to piece together how much the third party resented your connection. It's becoming obvious now. Every argument, every insecure reaction, every attempt to isolate your person emotionally traces back to the same root. The third party knew they could never replace what your person felt for you. They knew your connection wasn't something born from convenience or pressure. It was a soul-level bond. They knew your person became a better version of themselves when you were around, and instead of stepping back, they tried to destroy what they couldn't compete with. But the universe has a way of recalibrating things. What is fake collapses. What is real remains. The third party's interference created delays, confusion, and emotional turbulence, but it could not erase what was written in truth. And now the exposure has stripped away every illusion, leaving only what is authentic, what is aligned, and what is inevitable. Your person is beginning to realize that the longing they felt for you all this time wasn't weakness. It was their soul telling them what was meant for them. Every time they tried to suppress that feeling, it resurfaced stronger. Every time they tried to convince themselves to move on, something reminded them of you. A song, a dream, a memory, a random thought. The way someone said something similar to how you once did. The connection remained alive beneath the emotional noise, and now that the noise is dissolving, your person is beginning to feel the depth of it again. There is also a strong sense of accountability forming within them. They know they hurt you by choosing fear over truth. They know they let manipulation influence their decisions. They know they didn't stand up for the connection the way they should have. And although they aren't drowning in guilt, they are aware of it. That awareness is helping them grow, evolve, and shift into a more authentic version of themselves. What's happening now is the beginning of emotional alignment. As the third party's control falls apart, your person's soul is stepping forward, not rushing toward you, not making impulsive decisions, but aligning with truth, making decisions with clarity, seeing themselves honestly, recognizing the emotional damage they endured, and allowing themselves to heal from it. The universe is guiding this process, gently but firmly, making sure your person doesn't return to old patterns. This part of the journey isn't about action, it's about awakening. It's about reclaiming inner strength. It's about realizing what was real all along and why it never faded. Your person is standing at the doorway of emotional transformation, and for the first time in a long time, the path ahead doesn't look frightening, it looks honest. If your intuition feels the shift happening, write in the comments. I allow divine clarity to lead the way. The energy in this next chapter feels like someone slowly stepping out of a dark hallway into a room filled with light, blinking, adjusting, unsure whether they are ready to see everything clearly, but knowing they can't go back into that darkness anymore. Your person is moving through a deep internal shift that doesn't happen often in a lifetime. It's the moment when the soul refuses to continue lying to itself, the moment when the heart stops accepting what hurts and starts demanding what heals, the moment when truth becomes louder than fear. They're realizing now how much of their identity was shaped by emotional pressure, expectations, and silent obligations. They're recognizing how much the third party's influence altered their thoughts, decisions, and sense of self. When someone has lived inside emotional manipulation long enough, they forget their own voice. But since the exposure, your person is hearing themselves again. Quietly at first, then more clearly. They're beginning to remember who they were before everything got twisted. They're reconnecting with instincts they abandoned, boundaries they softened, and dreams they sacrificed. This internal awakening is powerful because it forces them to confront something they tried to avoid for a long time: the truth that they were never emotionally aligned with the life they were living. They stayed because they felt obligated. They stayed because they were confused. They stayed because manipulation made leaving feel impossible. But deep down, their soul was restless, their heart was exhausted, their mind was trying to hold everything together while their spirit was breaking from the pressure. Now, with the family seeing the truth, that pressure has been lifted. Your person isn't just thinking freely, they're feeling freely. Feelings that were once buried under manipulation are rising to the surface with force. Feelings they tried to deny. Feelings they tried to numb. Feelings they tried to convince themselves didn't matter. Feelings about you. You are resurfacing in their emotional world in a way they can't avoid anymore. Not because of longing alone, but because you symbolize the life they actually want. You symbolize honesty. You symbolize alignment. You symbolize emotional clarity. When they think of you now, they're not imagining a fantasy. They're remembering a truth. The connection with you never became toxic, never became manipulative, never became a battlefield. Even in separation, there was respect. Even in silence, there was understanding. Even during conflict, there was honesty. That contrast is hitting your person harder than ever. Family is noticing this shift too. They may not know the full story, but they sense that your person had emotional clarity with someone before this dysfunction entered their life. They're starting to ask questions, not out loud, but internally. They're wondering who made their loved one smile in ways the third party never could. They're wondering why your person seemed more grounded back then. They're wondering who you are to them, because the emotional reaction your person has now isn't about heartbreak. It's about returning to truth. Your person is thinking about the way they felt around you, safe, understood, motivated. They're remembering moments that felt effortless, conversations that healed them, the kind of presence that didn't demand anything. They're realizing that what they had with you wasn't chaos, it was peace. And peace feels even louder when someone has lived in emotional warfare for too long. At the same time, they're becoming more aware of how deeply the third party invaded their emotional boundaries. They're understanding that manipulation didn't just affect their decisions, it affected their ability to trust themselves. It affected how they expressed love, how they received love, how they saw themselves in relationships. The exposure wasn't just a moment of truth. It was the beginning of healing, the collapse of illusion, the breaking of a karmic contract. And now, standing in this new clarity, your person is slowly realizing the cost of everything they allowed. But instead of drowning in guilt, they're growing from it. They're evolving. They're shifting internally in ways that will not allow them to repeat this cycle again. This awakening is shaping them into someone stronger, more self-aware, more emotionally grounded, someone who knows what they want, someone who knows what they won't tolerate, someone who knows how to choose truth over fear. And truth is pointing them back toward you, not because of desperation, not because of loneliness, but because that connection was never based on manipulation. It was based on resonance. It was based on aligned energy, not forced attachment. And now that the emotional interference is dissolving, your person's soul is remembering you with a clarity they haven't felt in a long time. The universe didn't allow this exposure to happen randomly. It happened because the cycle was complete. The lesson was learned. The karmic tie was exhausted. And now the soul is being redirected toward the path it was meant to walk. Your person isn't rushing toward that path yet, but they see it. They feel it. They're drawn to it in quiet ways. They're beginning to understand that everything that fell apart was clearing the way for something real. If this message sits deeply in your intuition, type, "I trust the realignment happening now." The energy in this next phase feels like a powerful emotional recalibration, the kind that pulls a person into stillness and forces them to confront the truth they've been avoiding for far too long. Your person is sitting in that stillness now, not running from it, not distracting themselves, not numbing the awakening that is happening inside them. They're finally letting themselves feel everything they suppressed, every moment of confusion, every instinct they silenced, every boundary they compromised, every warning they ignored. The exposure didn't just reveal the third party's intentions, it revealed the truth about your person's own heart, and that truth is louder now than anything they've heard in years. They're beginning to understand why they were always torn inside, why they couldn't settle, why they couldn't fully commit to the path they were pushed into, why they felt disconnected, even when they pretended everything was fine. The third party's influence created a kind of emotional cage around them, one that made your person believe they had no right to feel, no right to want, no right to follow their heart. But now that the cage is cracked open, they're realizing just how trapped they've been. And that realization is heartbreaking, liberating, and transformative all at once. Your person is also becoming aware of the subtle ways the third party manipulated their reality. The small comments meant to plant seeds of doubt. The emotional reactions designed to create guilt. The pressure that made your person feel responsible for someone else's insecurity. The constant monitoring disguised as concern. The twisting of words to gain control. It all makes sense now, and the more your person reflects, the more they realize that this wasn't love. It was possession. It wasn't care. It was containment. It wasn't partnership. It was fear dressed as stability. And in that awareness, something profound is happening inside your person. They're rediscovering their own self-worth. They're remembering that they were once someone who loved without fear, someone who believed in deeper connections, someone who trusted their intuition, someone who hoped for a life that felt aligned with their soul. That version of themselves wasn't lost. It was buried. And now that buried version is resurfacing with a quiet but powerful force. This is the beginning of emotional reclamation, the kind that pushes a person to rebuild their identity from truth rather than survival. As they reconnect with themselves, the memory of you becomes more vivid, more centered, more undeniable. They're not idealizing you. They're recognizing the truth of what you represented. You weren't chaos. You weren't pressure. You weren't manipulation. You were grounding. You were clarity. You were emotional safety. Your presence didn't consume them. It allowed them to expand, and that's something they didn't appreciate fully until they were pulled into a situation where expansion was impossible. Your connection is resurfacing in their mind, not as a romantic escape, but as a mirror. You reflect the version of themselves they want to return to, the version that was honest, brave, and connected to their authentic emotions. The more they process, the more they understand why they never could fully detach from you, why the connection lingered even when circumstances made it impossible, why their spirit kept searching for you even when their mind tried to suppress it. Souls don't forget what aligns with them. Hearts don't forget who made them feel seen. Your person is also starting to notice how different they feel when they focus on you and your energy. It's quieter, calmer, more stable. There's no tension, no fear, no pressure, just truth. And truth feels foreign to them because they haven't been allowed to live inside that space for a long time. But now that they are stepping into it, they're beginning to crave it. They want to understand themselves again. They want to reconnect with what feels pure. They want to align with what makes sense instead of what manipulates them into staying. What's unfolding now inside your person is not confusion, not hesitation, not fear. It is awakening. The kind of awakening that only happens when someone has been pushed beyond their limits, had their truth questioned, had their reality manipulated, and finally sees every mask fall at once. They're standing in a moment that feels like the emotional ending of one lifetime and the beginning of another. It's raw, it's vulnerable, it's intense, but more importantly, it is honest. And honesty is the one thing their soul has been starving for. They're finally admitting to themselves that what they were living wasn't alignment, it was survival. They stayed in situations that drained them because they were conditioned to believe they had no choice. They let someone else dictate their emotions because they thought sacrificing themselves was the only way to keep peace. But now, after watching the truth explode out into the open, they can't go back to that version of themselves. The illusion is broken. The spell is broken. The emotional chains that held them in place have snapped in a single moment of divine exposure. Your person is realizing that they spent so long trying to be enough for someone who depended on their weakness, not their strength. Someone who needed them confused, not clear. Someone who benefited from their silence, not their truth. And as that realization hits deeper, your person is finally asking the question they never allowed themselves to ask. What about me? What about my feelings? What about my peace? What about my heart? They're beginning to see that there was only one place, one connection where they ever felt like their heart mattered, where their emotions weren't weaponized, where their growth wasn't a threat, where their truth wasn't punished. And that place was with you. Your energy is becoming the lighthouse in their internal storm, not because you saved them, but because you reflected the version of themselves they're trying to find again. Someone who felt alive, someone who felt hopeful, someone who wasn't afraid to dream. You were never the chaos. You were the clarity that challenged the chaos. And now that the chaos has shown its true face, the clarity of your energy is pulling them in, guiding them, reminding them of who they were before manipulation reshaped their life. Your person is also recognizing how deeply they underestimated their own heart. They thought they could suppress their feelings. They thought they could bury the connection. They thought time, distance, pressure, or noise would make them forget. But instead, the connection survived every storm, every lie, every emotional wound, not because it was convenient, but because it was real. Souls don't release what is aligned with them. Hearts don't forget what feels like home. This final moment in their emotional journey is about accountability and courage. They're looking at themselves honestly, not with shame, but with maturity. They're acknowledging the choices they made, the truths they ignored, the moments they ran, the times they let fear guide them. And instead of letting guilt drown them, they're using that truth to rise. That's the shift you've been feeling. It's not fantasy. It's their soul leveling up, preparing for the chapter they were always meant to walk into. They're not the same person who once felt powerless. They're not the same person who once doubted everything. They're not the same person who let others silence their intuition. They're awakening into someone who knows their truth, who feels their truth, who is ready to live their truth, even if it challenges everything around them. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. Your person is finally stepping into the version of themselves who can love you the way they always wanted to, but never felt strong enough to. This isn't the end of the story. This is the beginning of the part you were both meant to reach. The part where truth is louder than fear. The part where awakening is stronger than manipulation. The part where alignment replaces confusion. The part where every delay starts making sense. The part where destiny finally has room to move. If this final truth resonates in your heart, type in the comments, I am ready for what aligns with my soul. And if this message hit deeper than you expected, don't scroll away. Watch this video till the end, like it, share it, and help it reach every person who needs this clarity today. Your support pushes this message into the world and tells the universe you're aligned, awake, and ready for the next chapter.